Well, this week's video is going to have kind of a little different direction. Over the last couple years, the bulk of my concentration has been on wagon work because that's what's been coming in through for customers. But that's not always the focus of my business here. Otherwise, I would call myself Ingles Wagon Shop, perhaps. But I call myself Ingles Coach Shop for a reason. My real heart's desire is working on coaches, and I like carriages and buggy with curved, bent panels. And that's what we're going to do today. I've got some panels that I need to bend for another coach builder. He's working on a Yellowstone coach. And these side panels are bent in a compound bend, and not just everybody can get that accomplished. So I've been asked if I would bend these side panels for him. So I'm going to show you a couple pictures, and these are from the archives. Years ago I shot a lot of 35mm film, long before there was video. So these pictures are out of my shoebox, almost literally, and I've scanned them in to kind of show what these panels are all about. The two most common sizes in these Yellowstone coaches is the 8-passenger and the 11-passenger. One has 2 seats behind the drivers and one has 3. And when these coaches come in, they're usually to the point that they have to be completely dismantled, sometimes even the subframe rebuilt, and then go back the other direction. Well, these panels that I'm going to show you how I bend go on similar to this picture in a solid panel. Then eventually the step-throughs are cut out and the finished trim, and finally the seats are assembled. Well, in the case of this 11-passenger, it's the same configuration, just stretched out a little longer. Again, the same framework needs to be rebuilt, and then we can go ahead and use these bent body panels and assemble on the sides. They're kind of like a big banana. They're bent top to bottom, and they're also bent front to back. So this is how we start, and hopefully this is where we end up. So this is the framework that I built to bend these body panels specifically for these Yellowstone coaches. It bends the panels inverted, so this actually is upside down of where they'll be assembled onto the coach body. And because these are a compound bent panel, I have these little iron braces on the end that I will use to bend kind of a cup shape on the end of these panels. And I have these, of course, for both ends. Now I know most of you are on the ball, and you're going to notice that the metal framework is different on this end than it was on the other. Well, actually, after I shot this little section of video, I rebuilt this end and I made it a continuous outside curve like the other end. These hinges that I've used is just off of some old metal banding that I've salvaged. It's a high tensile strength and it really has nice flexibility. It really works well. I built these rib cages in sections of 3. So as it's set up as you see it now, it's designed for the 8-passenger 2-seat coach. I also have a third section that I can put in the middle. So now when I add this third section in between the 2 sections that are already there, it stretches out and it will be just the right size for the 11-passenger coach body. And that's the body panel that we need to bend. Well, there's not really much way around it. You got to take a 1-inch board down to 3/8. Seems like a shame, but that's kind of what you have to do. Well, I've got 2 templates that's made out of 1/8" plywood that I keep here. This one is for the 11-passenger coach body. Now these aren't really bent exact. They're a little bit over. The final fitting is actually when they're assembled on to the framework itself. Now when these are actually assembled onto the framework, there is a little difference between front and back. But I make them kind of interchangeable. When they come out of the steamer, they could bend either direction, so I leave the option open that they can be assembled either direction. Now, my father bought me this little Black & Decker jigsaw when I was probably somewhere around 10. Here it is 50 plus years later and still working. Now you've probably noticed in my other steam bending videos that I've had this secondary tank on top of the tank I usually bend bows and wagon fellows in. Well, this top tank is 16" in diameter, and the specific purpose is for bending these body panels. Now these 2 tanks are connected by a 2-inch pipe and a gate valve, so I can shut off this top tank when I'm only using the bottom. But when I use the top, I have to pressurize both the top and the bottom. Now since this lumber is kiln dried, 3/8 thick, I'm going to leave it in the steamer for between 45 minutes and 1 hour. Well, for the next few sections of this video, I have my hands full with just dealing with all the pipe clamps and getting these panels bent. So I'm not going to be able to move the camera a lot to give you a lot of different angles. And I'm also going to run this just at straight speed, so you get a feel for what kind of time it takes to get these bent. Now it's going to seem like I'm kind of fumbling and bumbling, and at times it'd be nice to have a little extra help, another set of hands. But my main goal is to get the ends brought together first before I really worry about what's the top or will actually be the bottom. Now I have to bring these ends in kind of in stages, so when I put one clamp on, it seems like the next one falls off, but that's just kind of the process of how it works. So I really don't get too excited about that. But I'll work on one end first, and knowing in the back of my mind I can't take it all the way, I need to get the other end caught up. So I'll go back and forth kind of in stages. One clamp will go on, another clamp will fall off. I'll readjust it and go back and forth until we finally have all the edges pulled together. You'll kind of see how it goes. So when I'm bending 1-inch thick, 2-inch thick, as you've seen me do, the temperature stays in the wood fairly long and I don't have a real big hurry. But I know in my mind this 3/8 is a lot thinner, it's going to cool down quicker. So I do have to kind of get her done. Now if you kind of watch while I'm bringing these ends together, you know I put 3 clamps along the top. When the ends come together, it wants to bow out to the center. I'm not really concerned about having the center tight, but I do want to have it kind of constrained a little bit. You'll see it a little bit closer on the other end. It's getting these ends brought around that form kind of a cup shape that is really the most difficult part of this whole bend. Now you're going to see here what seems like things are falling apart. But actually once I have the point together, that's my biggest concern. Now I can bring the other lips together and complete the bend. So there's two parts to this bend that really make it difficult. One part is the ends that has to be a compound cupped bend. And then through the remaining part of the body panel, all the bend is lateral with the grain. It's not typically where you would bend with the grain lengthwise, but this is a parallel bend, and that's a very easy bend to get the wood to break on. And that's why I have all these vertical supports, both on the ends and through the main section of the body, is to help prevent the splitting. Also, in bending these type of coach body panels, this is yellow poplar, and it needs to be absolutely clear. Any sign of a knot or any sign of a defect will show up in this process. And in the process of trying to get these two body panels bent, I actually had to do this twice. Because the first pair, one had a little defect in it, and sure enough, it split. So from here, I think you kind of got the idea, so I'm going to speed this up a little bit. You can kind of see now where I'm just bringing these panels to where they're uniform, making sure they have as straight a line as possible when they meet the top and all through the edges on the ends. So it's nice to leave these on the farm as long as possible. I like a day or two. But I don't really advise bending these too far before they are put onto the body themselves. A little bit of moisture still in the panels makes it a lot easier when they go on. And when that time comes when I can take them off the form, I do it by incremental slow stages also. I don't want to shock this lumber as it comes out of the form. I have had them break through this process also as much as through the bending process. So I do this very slowly, very uniformly. So I'm going to take a straight edge and lay across these boards, and you can kind of see the amount of bend that we have for these coach panels. So this is the method that I use when I'm bending the body panels for what's commonly called the Yellowstone coach. These coaches were most often built by the Abbott-Downing that I've worked on, and there are other coach builders also, but because I live so close to Yellowstone Park, these Yellowstone coaches are very familiar to my part of the country. And since I don't have a Yellowstone coach that I'm in the process of restoring, I don't get the privilege of showing you how these just go on to the body itself. I have 3 coaches here of my own that need to be restored, so maybe that'll be sometime in the future. But this is what I start with, and these old photographs like this one show you how I get them roughly put on and then go into the final finishing and trimming. And when they're finally finished, this is how they turn out. Pretty classy coach. Thanks for watching.